Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect and Quiver and by my patrons at patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I have a very special guest who I've run into a handful of times at various conventions, and obviously we've been Twitter friends for eons, back when Twitter was still a thing you could be friendly on. And a dear friend of mine encouraged me to talk to her on the show, and I was like, you know what? I will listen to anything you ask me to do. So I have brought on today Headology MTG, or I don't know, what is the other half of your name? It's like, I don't know.
Headology Magic, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also, Ariana works.
Yeah, that's fair too, but nobody knows your real name. You know what's funny about that? I met the artist Leon Tucker at Las Vegas. He does a lot of like art and concept art and other things like that. And and my friend Danny was introducing me, and he's like, yeah, this is our friend Shivam, blah, blah, and whatever. And later on, Leon turns to me and says, like, so what's your real name? Is Shivam your internet name? I'm like, no, Shivam is my actual name. It's my name here and there, so everybody knows who I am. But like, sometimes people come up to me, it's like, hi, I'm Chris. And I'm like, I know 400 Chris's. Who are you? And then they're like, oh yeah, I'm actually, like Drudge Skeleton on Twitter. I'm like,
on Twitter, yes, exactly.
Like that. I know who Drudge Skeleton is. I don't know who Chris is. Like, I have 1,000 Chris's. So, but yeah.
I know your chat name. I don't know the other one.
Oh God, dude. Can we lower or maybe move your mic back a little? It looks like you're peaking.
Back a little bit. Okay, we're peaking.
Yeah.
All right.
But the thing though is that you are like mainly a limited streamer, because I know I've watched you on things like the Sweatshop League that Hunter Pence did, because I used to watch those streams a lot. Because like
Sweatshop,
yeah, it's sweat. What's is that what you called it? Sweaty League.
Sweaty League. Weird. I like it.
Yeah, it was weird because like Hunter Pence, like as a San Francisco resident, I'm a lifelong Giants fan, and the fact that one of my literal favorite Giants is a Magic player just weirds me out super mega. And like, I've been trying to get him on my show for like 3 years, and he's just busy or doesn't respond or whatever. But I got a picture with him when he trashed me at my local during the AFR pre-release. So that was at least cool. My wife was like, you got to play with Hunter Pence. Oh my God. But yeah, the thing though is that like, I've seen you on a lot of these random like arena kind of like marathon-y charity things when it's like, and now we're going to be streaming and I'm going to be passing from me to Headology and whatever. And then, like, so I've watched you play arena a lot, which is cool. And Limited is secretly my favorite. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm not on the CAG, I can actually say it. Limited is my favorite way to play. Like, I don't have to rep Commander anymore. I can just live my truth.
Fair.
But, like, in briefly in talking to you, you're fascinating. And so I'm like, ooh, let's have a conversation. Because, like, for one thing, you're willing to stay up late to talk to me because you teach at like weird ass hours around the world. What do you teach?
Well, I specialize in English and writing and test prep. But it's easier to say after that what I don't teach. I don't teach biochem and phys, high school and above, and I don't teach calc and above. To really teach trig, I'd have to brush up on it. I only do what's on the SAT and ACT, which is less than
that's like
than a full trig
like
course.
Less about math and more about understanding how test people ask questions.
To some degree.
They're
just concepts. Those are both teachable.
Yeah.
Very teachable. So, but yeah, I have students all over the world.
Tests. Like, I got a perfect ACT back in 1998 or whatever it was. And like, my SAT score is very good too. But the thing is, it's just because like their puzzles are very easy to solve. If you're like a D&D or Magic player and you look at like an SAT test and it's like, please. I've run into harder puzzles in the Tomb of Horrors, man. Like this is not the thing. Analogies also. I'm very, very good at analogies. And
They
that they
no longer
love,
have those.
probably because they're useless and not very good to test on. Like who
Probably because they were slightly ambiguous. And when you have ambiguity on a standardized test, that's a recipe for very angry parents. And that gets ugly real fast.
Yeah, I think standardized testing is a little bit of a shenanigan filled scam, but that's a
It
different
absolutely
podcast.
is. I mean, not only because it favors, native English speakers with native English speaking parents. Like
Mhm. It
it's
also
very
favors
culturally
people who can
biased.
afford testing.
Mm.
And like, or not testing, but like Kumon or whatever your after school classes.
Yeah, I mean the fact is that it is they're both very the ACT and SAT are both very teachable tests. I have taught a 12-year-old to score very highly on the ACT.
Hmm.
So it's more about showing them the concepts that they're going to be tested on and then just going from there. So if you have the money to hire somebody who's an expert in the test to teach your kid, that's another way that the test privileges
Yeah.
certain groups over others. And
Yes.
so I would be losing out on a lot of revenue if I weren't teaching those tests.
No, fair.
But I would be happy to do so because it means that the admissions
Needed in there
process
anymore.
for college might be a little bit more fair and balanced.
Yes. That is something that I have a lot of thoughts on, both as a liberal parent and also as a person who has been helped by affirmative action and also hurt by affirmative action. Because, like, guess who is the most overrepresented minority in colleges? It's Indian people. Yay! Because literally, that's what we do. Our parents are high caste parents who immigrated to this country and were wealthy to begin with, and then came here because they wanted to get hyper education. And so now, in the like, since like the 90s and stuff, when the entire panoply of Indian people have been showing up, it has changed a bit. But for the longest time, the reason all the Indians, were like nerdy vegetarians is because their parents are all Brahmins from India, and there's a whole hierarchy of just wealth and caste inequality and class inequality, and that's a different show.
That's
Let's
very
all spice eight
fascinating, though.
racks
I
for that
hope
one.
people
Yeah.
will go out and look into that.
Oh yeah, it's messed up, man. Like the the idea of like people get like so cranky about things like, oh, affirmative action is hurting like white people. I'm like, no, dude, you guys have all the privileges already. You just don't realize it's just inherent in you because this is the air you're breathing, the language you grow up speaking. All these puzzles that are in the test are things that are just innate because you know this stuff from the cradle. So like
I
it's
think, yeah.
yeah, it's like it's not about equality, it's about equity. It's about making sure that everybody has an even understanding, or at least the ability to succeed
Yeah.
without.
And I think when we talk about privilege, a lot of people lose sight of the fact that um, no one is suggesting that their life isn't difficult or
No,
hard.
it's
All
the
we're
aggregate.
saying is that certain factors about them that they can't control didn't make their life harder.
Yes.
So, and that's what we're trying to remedy, or at least mitigate.
Yeah. But God, man, that is a whole slope of conversation right there of like,
Absolutely. Sorry, less magic based,
well, I
more
mean, yeah, whatever.
more
It's like,
teaching.
yeah, well, because that's true though, right? Like, because well, I mean, we're dealing with this right now in like the fact that in the United States, education is public education at least has been gutted over decades and has been
Yes.
suffering and is being challenged a lot. And private education is very non secular based and very much based on like what they want to mold society to be more than in sharing information. And colleges end up the people are like, oh, your colleges are so like liberal pilled and stuff. Like, no, really, liberals don't get tenure, man. Like that's just not a thing that happens. But it's we've gone from a country where everybody wanted to come to learn to a country where you can't even learn if you started here, and it's weird. Go to school, kids. Go to trade schools or go to colleges. Do something. Learn to read. It's important. Um,
Learn to read, and learn to think critically.
yes,
those are the two really, really important things that will serve you well in life.
Yeah, I feel like Limited has a lot to teach us about ways to actually approach, education in life, in the sense that, you sit there and you don't want to have what they call fancy play syndrome. Don't try to get too crazy. Make sure you're actually doing the thing you need to do, and don't just give up without playing to your outs. Make them have it. Actually critically think about the lines, look at the ways you're trying to go, look at the puzzle in front of you, and don't try to be like, well, what if I draw this card? No, that doesn't matter. The cards in your hand are the ones that matter, right? Anyways, Limited. How did you find magic?
How did I find magic? I found magic in Revised a long time ago, because I am quite old.
I came by this.
The first card I saw was Herloon Minotaur, and there were these kids playing it, these boys at summer camp, and I think I was 10, maybe. And I said, "That looks cool. Teach me." And they said, "But you're a girl."
What?
And I said, first I smashed my fists together because I had already, by that time I was taking karate. And I said, "Teach me." And they said, "Okay." And so I got my first, lesson in magic from them. I don't know how much they actually knew about magic, but I got my first lesson. And I went home and I begged my family to get me some magic cards. And they told me I could save up my allowance, and I did. And I went to a store where I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, called Hit and Run Sports Cards. And the owner, over my whole, starting from there and growing up through teen years, the owner, he encouraged me to learn the game, to play, to build decks. And if no one else was in the store, or if everyone else was busy, he would bring out decks and play with me.
That's awesome.
And so he encouraged my love for it. When there were basically no other girls playing, and this was the case throughout. In college, I went to pre-releases, and they were huge because I went to college out in California, in LA. Well, outside of LA, I went to Pomona College in Claremont, and we would go to the huge pre-releases at the Airport Hilton and things like that. And invariably there would be 900 people, and I would find the only other girl in the room to play. I would be paired against
you'd be paired up against each other. There can be only
great. One. But I never played Limited other than that, other than the sealeds for pre-releases, until after college, when I actually learned how to draft.
It's wild because
though that's been a long time too, I actually didn't start playing Limited for real, with any frequency until after college. So midway in my Magic life.
Yeah, I feel like you and I are of a similar generation, at least, because I also started in Revised, but I was 13 or 14 when I was in middle school. But because for the early decades, there were no women playing Magic, or there were maybe one or two I knew girls who were playing Magic with us, and they were mainly just interested because they were hanging out they were in the anime club, or they were hanging out with the nerds or whatever. And certainly there was not a ton of diversity either. But in California, I guess there was more because by nature of the fact that there's more Asians here, we were seeing them. But when I would go elsewhere to play, it would be me. I would be the only brown guy in the whole room or whatever. I also grew up in Massachusetts. I mean, well, I grew up in California and then moved to Massachusetts and moved back, but I lived in
Nice.
Shrewsbury for a while. And when I was there was no Magic cards. But when I came back to hang out with my friends, they had all discovered Magic too, so we could play together, which was neat. Uh,
Perfect.
yeah. God, man, Massachusetts is a very swampy place. A lot of
Swampy.
yeah, it's like because California is super dry, and so like it's so mega humid.
It's much more humid, yes.
Yes. And so
What heat
like,
we do have is humid during the summer.
it's all
Absolutely.
wet. It's all wet heat. But yeah, because I'm just thinking like when I was playing as a kid, limited didn't exist, and we would play constructed, or we'd play like sealed deck with a starter deck and a couple of booster packs or whatever. And then I didn't discover limited until like my friend was like, "Hey, you've been playing Magic on the Xbox. It just came because like I think Duels of the Planeswalker had come out in 2008 or something." And my friend's like, "I go to this bar or this pub where we draft," and I was like, "I've heard of drafting. I would love to draft." And he took me, and it was Rise of the Eldrazi. Rise of the Eldrazi is not a good first draft, and like
that's a rough one.
Yeah, like I open the pack and I'm looking. I'm like, first off, the cards look very different. Secondly, my rare is Sarkin the Mad. And I'm like, I've never seen a mythic before. I've never seen a planeswalker before. And I was like, what the hell does this do? And I thought it had summoning sickness, and then it died. And I was like, oh, that's weird. What's going on? And also, Eldrazi is a very weird set. It's a very does not make sense to me set to draft. I mean, it does now, but not when it's the first thing you ever pick up. I always think
we've
about
learned
like,
some lessons since then.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then like I started drafting in earnest when like Arena came out, and I was like, I get it now. And like playing at my FNMs before my kid was born, because now I can't. It's hard. It's like
yes, kids do put a damper on certain things.
Yeah, it's like turns out moving an hour away from my LGS and then having a kid meant that it's very hard for me to just drop everything and go off and play FNM or whatever it is. But that's why I go to pre-release, because pre-release makes it happen.
Pre-release definitely is a fun thing. The sealeds are always a fun way to just
sealed is the best.
Just get into the set.
Yeah, I love playing sealed, and I love because it's like the puzzle is small. You get a full feel for what the set does. Everybody's got crazy bombs, and it's fine. We are all here to just chill. But like when I'm playing limited against real people, like at MagicCon or in like Arena or something, it's funny because people would be like, "Oh my gosh, you're so nice, and it's so great to play against such a casual, chill person." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're dead next." And they're like, "But you're chill." I'm like, "At the commander table, we're friends.
Yeah.
At limited, you're dead." Like you are a roadblock.
I get competitive at limited, definitely. Right. My when I started off, I don't think I was cursing quite as much, but that's partly due to play boosters. I'm much more foul mouthed now. Apparently, I'm almost taking over for Voxy. We'll see.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. As somebody who played limited primarily, what do you think of the transition from old school boosters to play boosters?
Oh, I hate it. I absolutely abhor it. I find it, there's so many reasons that I think that it makes for a very bad limited, especially draft experience, but it's made sealed nigh unplayable.
It's weird when everybody's got 28 rares out of their 6 packs,
yes.
Right? Like, and
so, I mean, it exacerbates card power disparities. So, for example, when you have a set with bombs that just read "I win the game," and they're more frequently occurring because there's play boosters and there's more of the rares in the packs, that leads to the kind of games wherein it isn't what it used to be, where it's about incremental advantage, finding those good lines, thinking critically through them, and navigating the game to a conclusion where someone's going to win, but at least you played your best. But these lead to games where you can navigate the game perfectly, right? And beyond the normal variants of the draw sequence or the sort of land issues, you can just lose to the thing.
So the thing about play boosters for me is just that, like, it feels like we used to have a limited format where your 23 cards or whatever that you were playing, weren't always just easy slam dunk picks. Like you had to, like, especially when you get down to the 20s or whatever, there were just like some crappy cards that you had to run because you had to make up your numbers. But nowadays it feels like routinely I'm getting stacks that are 45, 50 cards or something because I'm like, which one do I cut? They're all just incredibly good cards that are all playable. And yeah, I get it. Wizard wants more playable than less playable cards, but it feels super weird that you end up with like, I don't know which of these cards needs to go away because they're all incredibly good and synergistic and work together. And that makes our decks just that much worse for people who are not really disciplined about what they're cutting. And then you also run into this other weird problem where since there's getting more rares and less commons, your uncommons become like incredibly rare, right? Like so like all the uncommon removal or uncommon like disenchant or whatever the two color signposts and stuff are suddenly much harder to get than just getting 3 bomb rares.
To some degree, yeah. Um so like I said, the problems that I have with play boosters, I'll go into detail in various places. So I hope I'm not repeating this for
Sure.
anybody who's already seen those particular rants. But to sum it up, basically, the the style of gameplay that play boosters lead to is not the one that I prefer. It might be it might be for some people who just love slamming bombs and doing things.
I
And
mean,
Wizards
I'm
has
that
said,
guy.
yeah. Wizards had said that it wants to appeal to newer audiences, and oftentimes, when you're a less experienced player, one of the ways that you win against more experienced players, besides obviously the variance of lands and the variance of draw sequence,
Sure, sure, sure.
is that you play a really powerful card that just reads "I win the game," and then you win games that way. I would maintain that that's not the healthiest for new players either, because it doesn't teach them any of the strategies or ways of working with
Right, but I
limited in
mean,
order
like,
to find that incremental advantage. Um, but that's I know that that's one reason that they were pushing for more rares per pack. Is that and obviously that coupled with the power creep means that you're getting a lot more of these I win the game bombs. However, when you have a large portion of rares and mythics in a pack, as well as a large proportion of commons, like uncommons rather, because they took out a common, because it's only 14 cards rather than 15 cards at this point, and they expressly said that they want to make everything playable. Um, you still get the disparity in power level between cards, even between amongst rares. Because if you took, for example, Duskmourn, in which the most powerful card was Overlord of the Mistmoors,
mm,
and you compare that and a power level to somebody who opens a Leyline that is unplayable, absolutely unplayable and limited, then you're and if that one person got one ley line in a pack, that's their rare for that pack. Often, maybe you'll be past one, maybe you won't. But the disparity there in power level between the rares and the idea that you can actually still get one as opposed to always getting two or three,
mm.
or even up to four, um, is it's compounding the issue wherein one person has a deck that they've managed to make synergistic with commons and uncommons, which is what and the occasional rare, which is what limited was supposed to be about. It's supposed to be sort of an equalizing format where you all spend the same amount, right? You spend your whatever your draft costs at your local game store, and you get to do your best with that. It's a slightly slower format and it's less powerful, but that means that there are more decisions and that therefore the decisions matter more. And so it wasn't meant to be like, okay, I cough rares at you that I paid $1 million for, right? In my
Well,
deck, because that's
okay, but
what standard and construction is all about.
right,
So
but the flip side to that argument though is like when you look at the research WotC has done, they're like the largest and most popular attended event are pre-release. B, the people who come to pre-release are not people who play Magic the way you and I play Magic, but they're people who come to pre-release basically. And sealed is the primary way they play. And you want to have a sealed deck that is fun and exciting and gets you to want to buy packs. So you want to slam down your Shivan Dragons and your Sarah Angels, or at least you would if you're me. And Foundations, let me tell you, my Sarah Angels won games. It was amazing. Just slap a leyline axe on her and she'll go to town. But the thing is, it's like when you think about it from that perspective, that like F&Ms aren't firing drafts anymore. 90% of the drafts that are happening on Arena, and like so, yeah, the people who are playing on Arena are going to be rightly annoyed by this because it's deeply, deeply unbalancing. But it's working, and the sealed events and pre-releases are filling up, and the people are having a good time. But it just irks me that they're throwing away the game balance in favor of, and I mean, like, I
Wait, do you
don't
have
know, because
evidence to
like I want
suggest
more
that
players, but I also want
pre-releases
good games.
were suffering before? Because I've never seen pre-releases suffer as
Oh
such.
yeah, I've seen pre-releases go from like this pre-release of Foundations was full to overflowing at my store. But like if you went a year or two ago, there were like 7 people at pre-releases, or like the whole weekend had like 10 people tops. Some of the sets were just really bad for limited and really bad for just playing, and I think Wizards has kind of found their groove again, but it feels like the limited formats and the way they design sets these days are so formulaic that like you can color by numbers and get like, oh, here's the 3-drop green, or here's a bear with the set mechanic, or here's the removal that also happens to incidentally kill flyers and artifacts or whatever. And I worry that they're painting too much by this, and that you're going to just get a bland limited experience, the same game over and over and over again. Like Duskmourn was at least interesting because rooms were cool and different, and like some of the mechanics in it were cool and different, but I don't know. I really enjoy like back to basics style limited games like Bloom Burrow and Foundations, but I can see why that would get really tiring. And you're right though, some of these bomb rares are just stupid. Like they're just
I mean, Overload of the
unnecessarily
Mistborn had
powerful.
like a 70% win rate. It was just
Yeah, it's like
no.
absurd, that card.
Yeah.
And I loved
Just
it,
like
and I'm like, I totally
Sunfall.
want it for Commander, but it sucks for limited, man. It's like,
Yeah.
or like I was there's like sometimes like someone plays a card and you're like, there's literally nothing I can do about this. It's bigger than all my removal, or I have no flyers, or whatever it is, and I'm just gonna get clocked, and I guess I scoop. That's not fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's worse when you navigate the game such that you've put yourself in a commanding position, and barring drawing that bomb, they're dead.
I will say this,
And
like,
so it negates all previous gameplay, which is really pretty painful. And
yeah,
there's nothing that you feel like is under your control at that point, in terms of just
yeah, like
being
there's
able to
nothing in you
win that
that'll
game.
win, and you're just like, well, I guess you have a Galta, and I'm just going to die. That's just how it's going to be. But I will say this though, it sucked to get Leyline as your only rare, or to get like one of those stupid sideboard cards that they print for control, for not control, for constructed decks, that
Yes.
needs to exist but is your rare, and you crack it in your stupid seal deck and you're like, great,
Yeah.
this is like, what the hell, there's that
Or you get the 3 lands.
yeah, you get like 3 lands, and then you get like that one card which says all artifacts can't be untapped or whatever the
Yeah.
hell, and it's like, what what
A
is this for?
hate card. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like, great. So, and then you
Yeah.
go up against Bommy McBomerson over there, and he's like, well, I cracked 75, like, rares that are
Yes, on
all
color.
Ragavans. And you're like,
Yeah.
well,
Mm,
I got a
yeah.
Savannah Alliance.
My Savannah Alliance is going to do its best, but unfortunately, it can't hold down the entire game by itself and
Yeah, seriously.
against an overlord, etc.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
do want to pull back a few steps though. So like,
Oh yeah.
um, let's talk about limited for a second here, and I mean more granularly in the sense of like, you said you started playing, like, how did you become a streamer? First off, why did you decide this is a thing you want to do?
Well, that's
I
actually a good
realize that sounds
story.
very accusatory, but I'm like, why would you do this to yourself?
So why would I do that? Yeah, it's a good question. So I started limited, I want to say in just before, I think it was like, what was, so Return to Ravnica block, what was right before that? That was
Before RTR?
um
Innistrad.
Innistrad, yeah. Innistrad, Dark Ascension, Avacyn Restored. Yeah, so I started in Return to Ravnica doing actual drafts. That
I
was
feel
when
like
I
a
started to
lot of us
learn.
came back during Innistrad and RTR block.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a little bit of draft, like not like one or two drafts during Innistrad block, but I didn't actually do like really learn it until
Mm.
Ravnica. So I'd been, going to FNMs and doing all the things, and then I had, Mac computers, Apples, from, for a while at that point, and so there was no way to play Magic
Mhm.
online, haha,
Not without doing a lot of
until
weird boot tricks.
I was actually I purchased a PC so I could teach computer skills on the PC as well as the Mac. Um, and at that point, I could get Magic Online. And so I started playing Magic Online, which was really interesting because I do think it's a wonderful resource for newer players to learn the phases and steps. I think it's a really nice way to do that. It's very frustrating though on occasion because you can click through something or your stops aren't set correctly, or
It teaches you Magic discipline like nothing else does, but it is also one of the steepest learning curves and most miserable programs to actually play.
yeah. Yeah.
But like if you suffer through it, you come out a better player by a
You come
lot.
out an absolutely better player. Absolutely. So
And the people
I was
playing on
playing
Midgo are
online
just
quite
going
a
to
bit.
skunk you. So you're like,
Yeah. I was playing limited online a lot, and I was, in the process, I would collect the sets. And the cool thing about Magic Online is it allows you to redeem it, right,
oh,
and for physical cards. And this was still controlled by wizards, and they would send you the cards, and it was super sweet. And so I was making my paper collection work for my commander stuff, and playing on in person. And I was also getting to play online and drafts when I wasn't going to my local game store. And so when I was doing, like, friends would, come over and we'd actually just sort of play together, thinking
group
through
draft.
lines and sort of things, that sort of thing. And they actually told me, they're like, you explain this, you should stream it. You explain it well, so you should stream it. So eventually my friend actually like helped finance my first like microphone and camera and the lighting, and so it was just that's I credit him with the the entire thing basically. Just several friends being like, hey, you should stream this. So I started, and I think I made partner within a month, and it was just
Damn.
crazy. Because the community is so welcoming and so kind and so wonderful. And so that's my story of how I began streaming it. And I've gotten
Were
to
you
meet
streaming
so
on
many
Midgo?
amazing people. Hmm?
You streamed on Magic Online first?
I actually didn't. So I started streaming a little bit of Magic Online, but then everybody was, like, this is ugly. Let's do Arena. And I was this like this looks like it was designed in the early 2000s. I was like, cause it was.
Yeah.
um So they were like, this isn't pretty, we want pretty. So I learned Arena and the sort of ins and outs of
Yeah,
Arena.
but I mean, luckily
And
Arena is a very easy program.
it was very fast.
Yeah.
And so I moved to that, and I doubt I would actually be at all able to handle MTGO without some practice again, because it requires a lot of muscle memory to sort of really make sure that you
The first
get
time
those
I ever
steps and
played on
stops.
MTGO, I decided I wanted to do they were doing Eternal Masters, which was it was like Vintage Masters.
Oh
It was
yeah,
the
right.
Vintage Masters was like the Magic Online only thing, and like the first pack I opened, I crack a foil Black Lotus, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh my god, this is the greatest day of my life. And I slam it, I build a deck around it because it doesn't even matter, it's a Black Lotus. And then I go to play my first game, and I play the Black Lotus, and I crack it during like the combat step when I meant to actually do it before or whatever, and my mana goes away, and I pause, and then the dude types in chat like, oh no, you didn't mean to do that, did you? And I'm like, no.
That
And
sounds
it was but what I didn't realize, it was single elimination. So like I played one half of one game, got lost, and that was the beginning and end of my Magic Online draft experience.
I am so sorry, but that does sound like a certain of your friends with a Mox.
Yeah. Yeah. let me tell you, man, not a good start. Not a good start. But
Not a
I
good
made
start. It's
I
yeah,
made my
it's a
money
tough
back. So
program. But again, the more you play, the better you'll get at it. And I was going pretty well infinite. It was really nice. And then I transferred to arena, and so
damn, you're
that's
way
been.
better limited than I am.
I am a decent player. I am by no means great. There's so much to learn. I have a bunch of streamers who I could name who are more talented than I am, and it's just wonderful watching them and
Yeah, but
learning from
it's
them.
not necessarily about being good. It's about being educational and entertaining and being somebody that people want to
Agreed,
watch.
agreed. Streaming is
Right?
about that. Yes,
Like, yeah,
yes.
like you need to be good enough. That's why I don't stream. I mean, it's weird because like I'm a better Magic player than like let's say 80% of Magic players. It's just that the 20% of Magic players that I'm worse than are like literally the best people, So it's like, well, um,
I just love having somebody better than me so that I can learn from them. That's
yeah,
my favorite.
dude,
And there's so many of them, and the cool thing about Magic is that they can be than me in different ways and have different play styles. So there's always something to learn from.
yeah. That's what like Kai
Um,
Buddha used to say. He's like, make sure you're the worst player in the room. Because then you're going to learn so much. And I'm like, who the hell is better than you? Like, how do you get away with saying that, Kai? It's like,
exactly. I think that's why he's yeah. I mean, he's just always. I don't even know who's better than Kai.
yeah, like literally, who is better than Kai Buddha? Like,
I don't think he can live up to his own advice.
no,
There's nobody in the room who's
patently
better.
false. It's like, okay,
Oops.
Jesus, whatever you want, just keep walking. The rest of us are going to try to follow you on the water, and we're just going to sink. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess maybe Paulo could maybe be better than Kai on a good day,
Yeah. They're all great
but
in
they're
their
all
own
so
ways.
good.
It's so hard to classify any as better than another usually.
Yeah,
It just I mean, obviously the record plays out, but like
dude, I
um
was talking to Martin Yuza, who is a Hall of Famer,
yeah.
literally one of the guys who's played the most Grand Prix of all time, and he's just insanely good at Magic. And I was like, so what's it like being in the team CFB house? And he'd be like, man, I'm just happy to be there. These guys are so much better than me. And I'm like, there's like 5 people in the world who could say conceivably that they're better than you at Magic. And he's like, yeah, and they're all on my team. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I guess when you're on
It's
teammates are
great
like
when there's
LSV and
still
John
something to
Finkel.
learn. And that's what's great about Magic too, is it can always grow with you. I mean, even they would admit that they're still learning about the game all the
Oh,
time.
yeah. That is the one upside of the fact that like we get a new set every couple of months is that you're starting over. You don't lose your heuristics, but you at least have a new puzzle to solve, and you can at least use those pathways in a different way to learn how to actually expand and grow this game. I mean, that's kind of why I like limited so much, is because there's a lack of stagnation. And sometimes limited formats, when they get boring, it's just like it's because it's the same decks over and over and over again. And I think they've been at least doing a better job of making sure that like most of the decks are playable. So like most of the combinations are playable, most of the archetypes are playable. That's why like my favorite way to play Commander is sealed boxing league, where you take one box of product and build a deck out of just what's inside that box, because it forces you to explore all the themes. It forces you to use all the limited only cards. It forces you to use like you can't use all your crutches that you have from building a normal Commander deck. No soul rings and none of this crap. And I think it makes you a more better player, or at least resourceful player, a more resourceful player. Because I think
Yeah.
that's like the upside of limited is like it teaches you how to be a resourceful player. You have
Yeah.
to beat that 3/4, and that means you got to double block with your 2/2 and your 3/3 sometimes, and use a combat trick and do other things that you wouldn't do otherwise.
I mean, it combines a lot of the different aspects of Magic into one experience that it was part of what I really love. I mean, you have the actual drafting portion where you get to evaluate respective card strengths, and you get to evaluate and that's a process that is extremely complicated, because whereas on the face of it one card might be a stronger card than another, for your deck you have to evaluate the synergies as well. You have to
Hmm.
look at your curve, you have to look at all sorts of considerations when you're drafting. That's really beautiful in terms of not only reading signals, but also figuring out how to craft your deck at the same time, how you're going to
Hmm.
maximize and optimize your picks. and what you think will wheel, and so on and so forth. And so the process there is extremely uh, it makes my brain effervesce in lovely
Yeah.
ways.
Okay, so I have some follow-up questions there. Do you play best of one or best of three?
I prefer best of three, but I usually find myself playing best of one often because it's ranked, and the
Mhm.
best of three is not ranked.
That is
And
so
people do
weird.
like
I
to
don't
see you
understand
rank
why.
up, and I like to see me rank up. So
I don't understand why best of three is not ranked. That just doesn't make sense to me.
it is an odd thing. I'm not sure either
I mean,
why they
personally, I'm
don't
a
have
best of
that.
one
It
guy
would
just
be wonderful
because
if
I
they
don't
did.
like
I'm sure they
sideboarding.
have reasons.
We're talking over each other again.
Sorry.
No, that's my fault, not yours. But I personally prefer best of one just because I don't have. I sideboarding is fine, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. And they've made so many modal cards now that you don't even have to. But also, I think like we lose something by not playing best of three because there's something about that back and forthiness and like the tinkering with your deck, and then like, oh, I'm going to get you next time. Um, that I just really enjoy. And so I'm really curious. Like, oh, that's what it was. We were talking about the play boosters and things like that. And I remembered what I was going to say earlier, which is that it reminds me of that old heuristic we used to use in the like 2009 of bread, bombs,
Mm.
removal, evasion, and other crap. And like,
Aggro and
it,
dregs.
yeah, because that's what it feels like you're drafting now, right? Like, it feels like we've gone away from using actual like standards to evaluate cards and just being like, take the best card and then take all the removal. And it's like we're going back to that kind of formula, which is weird because limited was
Well,
really good and then it got really weird. And now it's kind of
yeah.
steadying up a bit, but
I mean, there's a lot to. There are different heuristics that people have come up with now as beyond, besides bread.
yeah, because it's
Um,
a very out of date.
no, yeah, don't worry, yeah, but like it still holds true to some degree. Each of those gets weighted differently in different sets. If there are a ton of I win the game bombs that if you don't interact with them right away, you will lose. Then removal becomes a premium as well as bombs. But removal can be less important than curving out in certain sets that are
Okay, so
very aggressive, like one or MH3. So there's a lot of different ways those heuristics can be modified based on whatever the context of the set is, and you get to evaluate that. That's part of what you do when you're figuring out how to draft the set is figuring out what to maximize in order to mitigate the things that you see that are going to be problems for you in draft environment.
can you elaborate on that a little bit? What do you mean by like how are you drafting to mitigate problems that you don't like when you are face to face with a brand new draft format and you open your first pack, what are you looking for?
Well, I mean, the heuristic holds true from the start until you see what you need to deal with. So, for example, foundations. It was clear to me that it was going to be a little bit just from the the limited set first look
Mm,
that I did. It was very clear to me that it was going to be a slower format than we had had previously
mm,
because the past few sets have been the fastest ever, basically.
yes.
With Modern Horizons 3 first, followed by
It's
1,
weird.
followed by Bloomburrow and Duskmorn, which were roughly on the same tier of like
It's
speed.
weird to me that
Um,
Zendikar original is like no longer the fastest set of all time, right? Like
oh
it's
my god, I
crazy.
know. Um, so
MS3 was so much
so
fun to play though.
when you see that those are formats like that, you have to take two drops and one drops highly.
Hmm.
Provided the one drops have some value. Sometimes they're just bad that you can't use them, but you have to take two drops highly. You have to maximize that. You have to take removal that targets 3 toughness or etc. The white removal early or the X removal early that can stop you from getting overrun that quickly. Like because the game can feel like it's over on turn 3
Hmm.
in some of
Hmm.
these formats, and if you just don't have an interactive spell for the first couple plays that they make. This one I knew was going to be a little slower, so I knew that I could. It would benefit me to prioritize 2-for-1s more than normal because in the
Mm.
past, getting the value off of a 2-for-1 is not enough because in the way that I'm going to talk about, it's not enough because you were just overrun too quickly to be able to play those valuable 2-for-1s. For foundations, anything that draws you a second card or gets 2 cards back from the graveyard or anything that does that is going to give you the advantage that you need because you have more time. So you'll note, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, because I was just thinking about the fact that people have been saying that one of the best cards in the format is Helpful Hunter, the stupid cat, the 1/1 cat that draws you a second card.
Exactly.
Or like Elvish, not Reclaimer, but the other one that lets you raise the dead.
Macabre Waltz in particular is really, really good. It's not, you do have to discard a card, so it technically isn't card advantage as such, but it gets 2 creatures back from the graveyard, which is very good here because, again, that's card advantage to some degree, because you're ditching a card that you can't use, as well as the Macabre for your 2 best creatures out of the graveyard back. So
yes,
and there is decent removal, so chances are those will be in the graveyard at some point. And there's good.
What do you think about a card like Score Rallier? The 3/4, the 3 and a white for a 3/4 that's got the ability 2 and a white, look at the top 4 cards and get a power 2 or less into your hand.
Exactly.
What do you think about a card like that?
That again is a good card in this format because it's slower, so you don't need to have a really crazy stat for 4 mana. And putting in 2-drops in your deck is still good here because a lot of the 2-drops here get value early and late. And then there's just really powerful 2-power creatures even later in the mana curve. So not just 2-drops as such, but 3-drops that are 2-power, etc. 4-drops that are 2-power, like the Felidar. So there's that card is providing extra value because you're going longer. You're gonna have more mana. You're gonna want a mana sink like that. So definitely, like when I'm first picking, when I look at a first look for limited, I'll get a sense of a little bit about how fast the format is, but I won't know for sure until I actually play it for a while. Then I'll be able to address that by, prioritizing early drops, prioritizing stuff that can take care of early, removal that can take care of early creatures and things like that. And then take it from there. If oftentimes, there's an easy line in an early set, which is to take aggro, which often is Boros. So like when you haven't learned the set, sometimes that can be a really good way forward. But people tend to start realizing which colors give them those card advantage and give the most power bang for your buck. And so oftentimes the color distributions were slightly uneven. So take AFR, for example, in which, Rakdos was the stupidest thing and so overpowered compared to all the other color pairings.
Yes. Or like in Bloomburrow, where suddenly out of nowhere, the green-blue Frogs deck suddenly became like the best deck in the format once everybody realized how strong those stupid draw an extra card frogs were.
It was good. It never reached the top tier, but it was good. It was very good.
It was way better than we thought it was when it first started.
Yeah.
Yeah. People were like, this is garbage. And it's like, I don't know. I love playing. I really enjoyed playing Bloomburrow. I played a lot of it. Duskmorn, I could not get past the theming. The format was so fun, but it was just like gross.
Yeah. A lot of the time, so many people, and I'm one of them, I love the art of Magic. And I'm happy that the art of Magic is so diverse that it appeals to a whole wide, variety of people. This was not for me. I'm not a body horror person. Nope. I don't enjoy looking at that.
No, thank you.
So I share your sort of aversion to that aesthetic. But I understand. I'm happy that there were people who loved it, and I know that every set is going to be for me.
Exactly. Like I had Bloomburrow. I'm fine. I can sit this one out or whatever. But like it was so fun to play. And then I was so mad that it was fun to play because I'm like, I don't want to play it. But like Jolly Balloon Man is one of the funnest draft cards I've ever had. Because
but just don't look too closely at the art.
Oh yeah, no. But I would use it to copy the hover ship and just start exiling people's cards and then have anyways, it was great combo, good times. What has your favorite limited format recently been?
Uh, Probably Kamigawa,
Hmm.
Neon Dynasty.
God, that's so much fun.
As far as like fairly recent, I know that was a long time ago, considering the number of sets between now and then, but it really was a slightly slower format, and it was really cool. There were so many interesting things you could do. Um, I do know that there were certain decks that were better than others, of course, in terms of color strength. You
Yes.
could get certain decks that would just beat every other deck. I think red was that. There were just certain decks that just could
Their
not be
decks
beat.
did not work.
And
But
yes, and there were other, yeah. But you could have a lot of fun with it. And there were so many synergies. You could use any color pairing. You could splash all right. So
God,
I just
I
like
miss
being able
Kamigawa so
to be
much.
flexible. Which is why Bloomborough actually wasn't one of my favorites, even though I loved the artwork and I did love the mechanics, because it was such an on the rails set, meaning you were heavily rewarded and incentivized for sticking
Yeah.
to two colors and nothing
Like,
else.
I fully admit
Yeah.
that Bloomborough is not the set that, if you're a drafter day in day out, it's not the set that's going to grab you, because like it gets very boring very quickly, because it's like, if you are in black green and you're not taking squirrels, you're going to lose. It's just the game over. But for someone like me who's more of a chillaxed drafter, it
Huh?
was like, I could just sit and enjoy it and jam a lot of games. But like, I get why, like, for instance, the LSVs and Marshals of the world were not exactly feeling this vibe. Um, but I don't know. I think
Yeah.
I'm glad that at least we're getting some more variety in limited formats now, so that it doesn't feel so samey. Like, for a while there, it felt like they were all kind of on the same
Oh, really?
train there.
I guess I always see there's always something been new for me in terms of the themes and mechanics and synergies. So I've never felt that it was samey to me. I've always been able to see differences amongst each, and I do see certain cards that they'll have that do X, Y, or Z that are the same. Like you said, a green card that kills an
Yeah.
enchantment flyer or artifact, right? Or removes a card from the graveyard with canopy claws or whatever it is. I forget and the others, right? Broken wings. But like, so I do see that. I do see that you're saying that they have some sort of archetype based removal or bounce or things like that,
Sure.
and it's just like, okay, there's going to be a card in blue that does this, right?
Yeah, but
Or a
like, for
card in
instance,
green that does this.
maybe not samey, but it just hasn't been very fun. Like,
Hmm.
LCI into Murders into Outlaws was just not a fun stretch of limited. Like, that was just not fun. Those sets were not a good time. And I
I
loved all three
see.
of them for story and flavor and vibe and like cards to use in other formats. But like, uh,
Hmm.
putting a
Yeah.
ward
I
on
mean,
those stupid morph
one of the main
creatures.
problems for me were like for murders at Karlov Manor and outlaws were the first like play booster sets, and I really hate play boosters, as I was saying. But yeah, so I mean, limited is just like I said, it's so great because you get that drafting experience where you have to do the things that I said, that like exercise those skills, and then you get to build the deck, right? Which involves those cuts that you were
Yeah, the
talking
part that
about.
I actually hate.
And then you get to play. And so it's all sorts of magic skills and experience wrapped up into one big um joyful like explosion. I love it.
You know what
Um
card is a big joyful explosion that I'm loving these days?
oh yeah.
Goblin Negotiations. The X red spell
Yep.
that like makes goblins for extra damage you do. Like, yeah, it's not the best card in the world, but boy howdy does it make me feel good to nuke your thing and end up with a handful of goblins at
And
the
end
end.
up with
It's
some
just like
gobos.
so cool. It's such a delightful design.
It's yeah, there's some great designs, and the harkening back on like so Zulashur. I don't know if you remember, this was something that was on flavor text on a ton of different cards, like Deathmark, the 10th
Yeah.
edition one with the swamp
Yes.
pupil. Like Zulashur has been quoted on as in flavor text for a long time now and didn't have a card, and now it has a card, and it's so cool.
Yeah, the jumpstart legend.
No, she's actually in the set.
She's in the main set?
Sure, she's
I can't
one
tell
in
the
a
difference
black,
between them.
and you can tap her to play a zombie from your graveyard.
Yes.
And she has
I
Ward
need to
2
get
life,
that card
I think.
for my zombie deck. That's why I was like,
Yeah, she's
the
in my
Ward
zombie
2
deck
life,
already.
right?
I just put her
It's
in.
super annoying.
Yeah.
Sometimes some of these ward costs just make me upset.
That's why you need Blasphemous Edict to get around it.
In any event, this has been a lovely chat, technical difficulties aside, but
yeah,
I would love to have you on again, and we should actually delve into this more, because I would like to.
Absolutely.
It's really fascinating to me to talk to drafters who are from different schools than just like Marshall and LSP, to see where your thoughts are and how you analyze and understand sets. And next time we should totally go into that, because I would be really interested to see how you approach the art of drafting. But we've kind of hit our limit here, and it is late, so I'm going to call it a day. But if folks wanted to find you, where could they go?
They can go to Twitch TV /Headology Magic, or YouTube Headology Magic channels there.
Awesome.
I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky and all the things.
Yeah.
Mostly being an idiot on the internet.
I mean, yeah, we're content creators. What else are we going to do?
Well, we're also creating really good, inclusive, safe spaces for, the Magic community, which is among the more wonderfully diverse that's out there in gaming. And
it's
so I think we're doing
better.
good.
Oh my God. Like, yeah, we talk all the time about how the community has got problems and challenges and things, but holy crap, is it just, even in the past 10 years, it has just been a sea change of the kinds of people we see in it. And I love to see it.
Yeah.
I love going to, like, the first GPs I went to were like all dudes who were all just sweaty tournament grinders and just being angry at each other. And now you go to like friggin' MagicCon, and there's like families. There's like people who are of all races and genders just hanging out and jamming games and chilling. I'm like, what is this? This is the Magic I want to see. I love it. But anyways, friends, you can find me on Twitter at GearPreGears, or on Blue Sky. You can just Google Shivam. I'm easy to find. You can also find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday, thanks to my editor, Dan. You can also hear me on Shivam and Wheel of Love Magic, or on the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. And remember, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.